You know what? Let's just talk about Justice League because everyone else is, so I'm going to too. So Zack Snyder's Justice League is one of the most fascinating things to happen in recent film history. It's something that we never see. We never see a film that was completely finished and released to the public, like so universally hated that they give it back to the original director and let them shoot new scenes and completely retool it into a different film. It is just so weird that Warner Brothers would go through with that. I mean, considering them kind of replacing Zack Snyder and like so many people involved in the DCEU seem to be on bad terms with them. But hey, they went ahead and did it anyway, and I'm glad about that. Now, I am someone who was a denier of the Snyder Cut. I believed that there could be a finished cut of the movie, but I doubted that Warner Brothers would ever spend the loads of money required to do the CG and such, and then they did. Zack Snyder's Justice League might just be the most expensive movie ever made. Warner Brothers wasted so much money on this movie. And everything would only get even more confusing as more news of the Snyder Cut came up. For one, it turned out that Zack Snyder wasn't even finished filming it. Like, he was only like 80% done or something and still had to film some more scenes. It was even more confusing when new scenes were being added in that weren't intended to be in the original cut. I also originally thought this was gonna be like a 3-hour movie. Like, I expected a 3-hour cut of Justice League, but then it ended up with like 4 hours, which is pretty insane. Now, this is a movie where Zack Snyder had full creative freedom, and that is something we rarely see in like a big blockbuster movie, especially with comic book movies. Now, that doesn't guarantee that the movie is good, but it does guarantee that the movie will feel genuine. I mean, I'm one of the only people out there who actually kind of enjoyed Joss Whedon's cut of Justice League. I mean, it wasn't great, guys. It was bad, but I liked it in like a schlocky, dumb, kind of fun way. It really did feel like a Saturday morning cartoon. That's the comparison I always hear. And I still remember hearing about how different the original vision was and thinking about how much better that movie would have been. Like, even just a few scenes added from Zack Snyder's original vision would have made it a better movie. And I am glad that it's finally out, because dealing with fans of Zack Snyder has been an absolute nightmare. I'm so happy this is over with. Oh no. So here I am to give my thoughts, spoilers and all, on this 4-hour long comic book movie. In all honesty, this is exactly what I expected, which is mostly good. I like Zack Snyder films, but a majority of them are very flawed, so I wasn't really expecting a masterpiece with the Snyder Cut. I was just kind of expecting a cut with better character development, less CG Henry Cavill lip, and a movie that was a bit less goofy. And I got pretty much exactly that. This is like a heavy metal version of the theatrical cut. The look, the music, the editing, all of that adds to making a film that feels completely different. If Joss Whedon's cut was a cartoon, this very much feels like a comic book. I'm actually surprised at how much like a modern comic this movie felt. It felt like Zack Snyder was kind of showing that he is indeed a comic fan, which is something that's always been kind of in question. It always felt like he's only ever read 2 comics. The redesign of Steppenwolf was awesome. Despite a lot of people disliking it, I really like how he looks. It really fits that like heavy metal vibe the movie kind of has. I loved all of the Apocalypse stuff, and I love how it kind of set up and alluded to future films. That was awesome. Darkseid's design was great. Looks just like he does in the comics. I loved him here. And I feel like people are often too critical of CG when it comes to big budget movies like this. I mean, it didn't always look great, but the fact that the special effects artists are the ones that are pretty much carrying this movie, like without those special effects, this film would not exist. This is surprisingly also lighthearted and fun for a Zack Snyder movie. It has its darker moments. Obviously, there's more blood and a couple of F-bombs, but it still feels like more of a fun movie when compared to something like Batman v Superman. The addition of blood and some gore was actually great because it felt like a comic in that sense. Like, comic books are allowed to be rated T while still having like insane amounts of blood or gore. Really, the rule for comics is you just can't swear or have nudity, which is ridiculous. But this movie, even though it's rated R, fully captured that vibe. Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and this movie are all very different, and I love that. It makes me curious to see what the rest of Snyder's films would have been like. Would they have been similar to Justice League, or would they have been very much their own thing? Characters are all further developed, and the plot points make much more sense here. Cyborg, of course, was one of the best parts here. It was just like I wanted, because I loved the character, but I feel like the theatrical cut just did him dirty. Now it's time I should mention the elephant in the room and say that a good 70-75% of this movie was stuff in the theatrical cut. A lot of stuff that people like me thought were Joss Whedon additions are still very much here. Most notable being Flash's very awkward dialogue, which is almost never funny. It's very painful to watch. But even then, Flash gets a bit more of an arc here than he did with the theatrical cut. I mean, his scene towards the end where he kind of reverses time is one of the highlights of this movie. The reviving Superman from the dead plot is unfortunately still here and still makes no sense. It really is a shame that it takes up nearly an hour of the movie when it comes to that stuff, because I found that to be the weakest stuff in the film. And even when Superman shows up, it feels like he doesn't really do anything here that he didn't already do in the theatrical cut. He just kind of shows up to save the day. Although, fortunately, the final fight with Steppenwolf does feel a lot more like a team effort, which I really liked that. Seeing the black suit was awesome, though. I liked finally being able to see that in a Superman movie. A lot of the emotional moments revolve around Lois and Ma Kent work a lot better here. There's no thirstiest woman line in this one. Aquaman also felt to me like a better defined character. He's not as fun here as he is in Aquaman, but I understand that given the studio probably wasn't really pushing that as much back then. You can really tell they gave Zack Snyder full creative freedom, because there is way too much slow-mo in this movie. That is probably why it's 4 hours long. Speed up a few scenes and you'd have a 3.5 hour cut of this movie. Now, one thing that was cut from Joss Whedon's version, which I would say actually kind of improved upon the source material, was when they had Ben Affleck Batman kind of bring up the fact that he's murdered some people in the past. I was kind of waiting for a scene like that in this one or something similar to it, but it's just never brought up. Since we're already in spoilers, I will say that the epilogue portion is very messy. It's probably the movie's biggest hindrance. The theatrical releases and credit stuff, which I thought was the Joss Whedon edition, actually was Zack Snyder's stuff. And then there's that Nightmare-verse dream sequence that's kind of alluding to future films, and that really felt like it would have worked so much better in the end credits. I don't care if it's 10 minutes long, just put that shit in the credits and you'd have a more tightly constructed, better movie. Oh, and I still hate Jared Leto Joker. I was hoping that he would wow me away in this movie, but yeah, no, that laugh is awful. Now, I don't really support the Restore the Snyderverse movement, because it kind of feels like a give a mouse a cookie scenario, but it is sad that we'll never get to see the apocalyptic Justice League movie that Zack Snyder clearly wants to make more than any other DC movie. And there we are after the 4 hour long movie. Words show up on screen that say "For Autumn," and it was a very emotional moment. I can make fun of Snyder stans all I want, but this isn't really about them. This is about Zack Snyder and the love that he put into this film. I say never look up to celebrities, but Zack Snyder honestly seems like a real nice guy, and after everything he's been through, he deserved this movie. Is Zack Snyder's Justice League the perfect movie everyone wanted? Hell no. But it's surprisingly good. A huge improvement, and exactly the movie that I wanted to see. This is easily the best Zack Snyder DCEU movie. I mean, in terms of DC movies, Watchmen is still better. But it shows that Zack Snyder is a director that is able to adapt. When it comes to production, it is one of the most fascinating films ever made, and I'm glad that it gets to exist. I don't know what's up with the DCEU now. Nobody seems to be looking forward to that Flash movie, so we'll just see what happens. Who knows? So thank you all for watching my quick little review of Zack Snyder's Justice League. It was definitely an experience. So thanks again, and bye.